time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, it is Friday, July 31st. It is the first day of the weekend because, as you know, as of this week, Friday becomes part of the weekend. I need a 3-day weekend. This is the only way I can get it, so you're just going to have to adapt. Want to let you know that since it is Friday, we're keeping the phone lines open for the first half of the show. 773-763-9278. 773-763 WCPT. Text me. Call. Paul Shivari's in for Lady B today, so you get to speak with the lovely Paul Shivari. If she's Lady B, Paul, should you be like Mr. C?
I guess we could go with that. Some people say Mr. PC, but I don't know if I'm necessarily PC.
But that could throw people off. Okay, well we'll work on it. We'll come up with something that doesn't embarrass both of us. Okay. So everything new is old again. Everything old is new again. Nothing changes. How's that? What is going on in Iran? Well, that's a very good question. For some reason, Donald Trump has decided apparently to focus on Gaza for now. Yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. And he is saying that Israel is like really, really happy about this new Gaza peace plan. Of course, the peace plan doesn't really specify what is supposed to happen with Hamas. Is it supposed to just disarm? Is it supposed to withdraw? That hasn't been really worked out yet. And even though Donald Trump told Volodymyr Zelensky he wasn't going to give them Patriots, but he was going to give them sort of the plans, so they could build their own. Because, as you know, we're running short of munitions. And Zelensky said, that's fine. You don't need to give us the munitions. Just, basically give us some specs. We'll build them ourselves. Donald Trump said yes. Oh, but now he says no. He's not sure anymore. Because, giving the Patriot information to Ukraine, that's a big step. That's a big step. Apparently, it must be a bigger step than it was when he said he was going to do it. Don't you hate it when steps get bigger? It's really annoying. So, yeah, he's now, he does this all the time. The same thing, we've signed an agreement with Saudi Arabia. We're going to allow them to enrich uranium. Oh, wait, I forgot to say, but that only takes place if they recognize Israel. Okay. You would think he would not say something or not make an offer until he kind of knew all the parameters, what it was going to entail and not entail. But you know what? Can't wing it if you're thinking that hard, right? So, Trump says Israel is very happy, but it's a little unclear what Hamas is supposed to do. And also, he's also saying, even though they're very, very happy, Israel hasn't really officially accepted this deal. So, as most things, when it comes to the Middle East with Donald Trump, it's a bunch of hot air. But with the war in Iran, since Trump doesn't have the brain power, the experience, or hasn't surrounded himself with people with expertise, he has no idea how to get out of the situation in Iran. Every time he tries to pretend that there's a ceasefire, Iran's kind of like, no, we didn't agree to that. Here's some missiles. But we're gonna attack another oil tanker. Every time Donald Trump says that there are actually talks going on, Iran goes, no, they're not. Nope. Iran is hurting because of this war. There's a lot of economic damage, and we reported a while ago that there were food shortages. But the leaders of Iran, honestly, don't really care a lot about the suffering of their people. They feel that the big prize is coming out on top in the Middle East, not just being in control of the strait, but being one of, if not the dominant player in the Middle East. And they believe that they can take the pain longer than Donald Trump can. They might be right. So you may have read Donald Trump is taking his cabinet to Camp David, a place, interestingly, that he has said repeatedly he really doesn't like. But he is taking his cabinet to Camp David, and they are going to try to figure out what to do about Iran. Do you suppose Linda McMahon from the martial arts area of WWC, is she going to have some real insight into what to do about Iran? How about the other clowns and monkeys that are the members of his cabinet? Is there a single one you would trust to offer advice on a situation this serious? I mean, when you surround yourself with imbeciles, you can't suddenly take them off to Camp David and think that they're going to come up with a solution to the Iran war. It doesn't work that way. But Trump made sure to pretty much get rid of or sideline any diplomat or State Department employee that actually had the knowledge and expertise to sit down and talk about this intelligently. You know, I don't know if Pete Hegseth's going to be there. You know, he might be busy doing push-ups and shooting up testosterone. But, you know, when you fill the cabinet positions with people who are utterly inexperienced and incompetent, and you do that on purpose because you don't want anybody telling you you can't do what you want to do. You don't want anybody standing up to you. Well, those aren't people who have what it takes to give you good advice. Perhaps they're not the people who have what it takes to give you any advice on anything. But Donald Trump really doesn't think he needs advice, right? Right? So it doesn't look like, how many days have we got here? I have to recalculate. What date's today? The 31st. 98, 97, 96, 95, 94. 94 days till the midterms. And unless Iran decides to throw Trump a bone, we're still going to be involved in this conflict that a lot of people are starting to say is shaping up as a forever war. And isn't that delightful? Isn't that just what we need? Because he keeps saying, oh, ceasefire, we're talking. And Iran goes, no, we're not talking. And here's some missiles. Oh. And then eventually Donald Trump says, well, you know, they're not cooperating. Today, he said something like he hates them. He really hates them. Well, that's useful. That's going to get us. That's going to get us to the end of this conflict. He hates them. I don't think he has any idea how to get out of this. I think the only way this conflict ends, this war ends, if Iran decides it's over. If Iran decides they've gotten enough, if they've gotten what they want, then it will be over. Because Donald Trump can't do what he always does. Oh, I woke up this morning and I decided the war was over. Yay, us. It takes two to make that kind of a statement work. And when you make these big announcements and Iran says, we're not talking to you, and here, by the way, we're going to bomb you again. Donald Trump he has no ideas. And I can't really see that Netanyahu's going to help him out. I mean, he runs hot and cold on Bibi. And if Bibi were going to give him advice, it would be, oh, man, you got to stay in it for the long haul now. You've seen what they're like. Now you must agree with me that they must be just utterly destroyed. I'm guessing that might be what Bibi would say. So here we are. Same old, same old. You know, Representative Debbie Dingell from Michigan, Congresswoman, was talking on CBS News, a show called The Takeout with Major Garrett. And she talked about Trump. She had told people a long time ago that it looked like Trump was going to take Michigan. And so she's a pretty realistic person when it comes to Trump. She was talking on CBS about Donald Trump's appeal. Listen to this.
In 2016, you were kind enough to pull me aside and say Trump looked formidable to you in Michigan and other parts of the upper Midwest. Do you still believe that? And when you saw him in Michigan earlier this week, do you think he's as formidable as he used to be?
No, I'm going to tell you. I mean, I did. You know that. I said it to you months before he won Michigan, that I was in those labor halls. I heard him talking. He was appealing to working men and women. He understood their issues, and Democrats weren't talking about the issues that matter to them. I'll tell you, I've talked to a lot of people that supported President Trump, what'll be 2 years in November, who are hurting. They were talking about affordability 2 years ago, but they didn't think that they would see the cost of gasoline go up. Young people are worried that we're going to end up in a war, and are they potentially going to be drafted? Well, auto workers, I mean, our relationship with Canada has always been a prized relationship between our two countries. We've supported each other in the auto industry. Auto workers are worried about their jobs. And when he talked about trade in 2016, they thought he was going to fight for them. But even now, he's getting softer on China than people thought he might have been. So there's not to say that they're not still Trump supporters here, but this administration, this 4-year term is far different than the 2016 term.
So there you go. Somebody who has in the past been pretty clear-eyed about Trump now has a take that he isn't the same appealing character that he once was. Well, let's talk about Todd Blanche. Oh, come on. You know you wanted to. So the vote on whether or not Todd Blanche's nomination to head the DOJ should be sent from the committee to the full body of the Senate, yeah, that vote's been postponed. Tom Tillis and John Cornyn, both Republican senators, have said that they want Todd Blanche to put in writing that the $1.8 billion slush fund is dead. They also want a commitment from Todd Blanche that this IRS deal that Trump negotiated with himself, they want to know that that deal is dead, because apparently they were willing to go along with the IRS part of it as long as Todd Blanche agreed that it only affected stuff in the past, like the IRS couldn't go after Trump or his businesses or his kids for anything that happened in the past. But that's not the way it's written. The way it's written is that for in perpetuity, Trump, any of his businesses, any of his kids' businesses, pretty much anybody who ever talked to Donald Trump is immune from IRS audit forever. Not just for what's gone before, but for the foreseeable future until they croak. And Donald Trump, I don't know what Todd Blanche might have said to them about that, but Donald Trump said, no, that doesn't work for me. I like the immunity deal as it's already written, where I have complete immunity from anything to do with the IRS, and so does everybody who loves me or works with me or met me forever. And Cornyn and Tillis met privately with Todd Blanche. We don't really know what was said, but we know what Donald Trump has said. I'm not doing anything different about the immunity deal. And I'm not, not only does he not want Blanche to put in writing what Blanche testified to, which was that the slush fund was dead, Donald Trump has been doing interview after interview saying that the slush fund shouldn't be dead. It's an important thing and it needs to exist. Because, there were people who were harmed by the government and they need some kind of payment. So that's why Todd Blanche won't put it in writing. It was supposed to be a lie that was supposed to smooth things over, but he wasn't supposed to have to be actually held to account for it. So, poor Todd Blanche, the man who deserves every bad thing that is happening to him. And I don't say that lightly. Even people who do bad things often have parts of their activities or their character that can still be praised. I don't see that in Todd Blanche. I really don't. Michael Wolff, I always talk about how he wrote Fire and Fury when he was given inside access during Trump's first term. Well, that's he's written 4 books about Donald Trump. The most recent one he wrote was about the 2024 election. So he's continuing to churn out Trump books. And he knows a lot of the people in the White House. Apparently, a lot of the people in the White House continue to chat with Michael Wolff. And a lot of the people who are in the news are people Michael Wolff has met and spoken with. Michael Wolff posted something, his take on who Todd Blanche is, what has happened to him, and whether or not he deserves what's happening to him. Listen to Michael Wolff.
What happens when you go to work for Donald Trump? Well, everybody knows what happens, but yet forces themselves to pretend that it will be different for them. When I was writing my book about the 2024 campaign, All or Nothing, I followed Todd Blanche pretty closely. Blanche was Trump's personal lawyer in his 4 criminal indictments, and Trump treated him horribly, screaming at him, belittling him, mocking him, this on almost a daily basis. Now, everyone around Trump told Blanche, if you can make it through this, you'll become the Attorney General. And Blanche at that point was a pretty undistinguished white-collar criminal lawyer. So this sounded pretty good. In fact, Trump didn't make him the Attorney General. He made him the number 2. But again, he was told, if you really showed your loyalty, you'll become the Attorney General. And this loyalty included overlooking an extraordinary tax deal that Trump forced on the Department of Justice, giving Trump himself and his family immunity for all their tax problems. Now, during Todd Blanche's confirmation, finally his confirmation for Attorney General, key Republican senators flagged this exact issue. And they didn't really want very much. All they wanted was Blanche to put in writing that Trump's immunity would be for past sins and not future sins. Well, Trump said no. He was not giving back any level of immunity at all, even if that meant losing his Attorney General, even if that meant compromising Todd Blanche's future. So Todd Blanche, like so many before him, no matter the devotion that they showed, got screwed. Blanche, of course, deserves to be screwed, not least of all for failing to understand that this is exactly what would happen.
Everything Trump touches dies. What I thought was interesting in what Michael Wolff said, because like I said, he's still plugged into the White House, the fact that Donald Trump was screaming, cursing at, and berating Todd Blanche on a daily basis. On a daily basis. Who would put up with that? Yes, you know, if you're a lawyer representing a client, your client might lose it. Your client might yell at you. But if your client berates you, curses at you, screams at you every day, what lawyer would continue to represent that client? But as I said, you know, Todd Blanche put all of his eggs in the Donald Trump basket. He walked away from a partnership at a law firm, picked his family up, moved them down to Florida. Without Trump, he's got nothing. So he sat there and he took it. And the Trump people, maybe it was Susie Wiles. Oh, you know, he's got a temper. You just kind of have to let it roll off your back. Trust me, you're going to be Attorney General. Oh, wait, he's decided to make Pam Bondi Attorney General. But you're going to be the number 2. And if you just play your cards right, someday you'll be the number 1. And now, when he finally is looking at that opportunity, Trump is literally making it impossible for him to get confirmed. Making it impossible. Todd Blanche has to toe the party line. Certainly by now, he's realized that any deviation from the Trump script, and you are out in the cold. And what's he going to go back to? He's going to go back to his law firm with his hat in hand saying, oh, you know, I made a mistake. Can I be a partner again? What is he going to do? He's kind of boxed in, and he kind of did it to himself. And Donald Trump has said both. He has said both, you know, because the vote was postponed indefinitely. He's now said, well, you know, if I can't get Tillis and Cornyn on my side, well, then I'm just going to keep him on in the capacity he's in now, which is acting director. He can still function as the head of the DOJ, pretty much. And I'm going to wait till January when they're no longer in office, and then I'm going to put his name back into play. Yeah, okay. I could see that. There was also talk that Donald Trump was going to try to do his pressure campaign, going to try to get in touch with Cornyn and Tillis. I mean, he's already said, okay, fine, I'll just wait till they're out of office. But you know, Trump doesn't want that. He doesn't want to wait. So my guess is he is going to be on the phone with these two guys, trying either the carrot or the stick, or both the carrot and the stick, to try to get them on board. He screwed over Bill Cassidy, ended his political career, but Cassidy could still be bought or threatened. Cassidy had originally voted for the War Powers Act and then withdrew his vote after Donald Trump chatted with him. Donald Trump is going to apply that same kind of pressure to Cornyn and Tillis. So who knows if they'll capitulate, or if you're cynical, when they'll capitulate. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with texts and calls and more stuff to talk about right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
It is Friday. We are going to talk to you about the news of the day, the news of the week, take your calls, read your texts. For the first half of the show, I got a lot of texts about Iran. Bob texted, I fear the Iran war will frustrate the American dictator until he wants to use nuclear weapons. I hope someone in government can prevent that. I agree with you, Bob, and I hope someone in government can prevent that. I would like to believe that even for the military leaders who are into Hegseth and into Trump, that would be a bridge too far. I mean, do you really want to be known as the military leader that dropped a nuclear bomb? What a legacy that is. I would like to believe that will not happen. I would like to believe someone will stop that. I like to believe a lot of things. Let's just hope that this is one we're right about. Joan, this is Joe from Homewood. It's going to be called the Camp David Accordion with a capital A. Yes, Donald Trump is taking his cabinet to Camp David to try to figure out what to do about the Iran war. And remember when we had a Middle East agreement that was hammered out at Camp David, and it was called the Camp David Accord? I agree with Joe. The Camp David Accordion. It comes and goes. It's big. It's little. It moves constantly. Yeah, I think Joe could be very, very right about that. Here's another text from Mark. I think Iran will keep this going for years and make a deal with the next administration the same way they did in 1980. Remember, Iran had some hostages. Jimmy Carter was trying to get them free, but it is now been reported and widely accepted that Ronald Reagan's people went to Iran and said, don't release the hostages. Don't release the hostages and until Reagan is elected, and then we'll do this, that, or the other thing for you. And Iran did. They did. And many believe that that was the one thing Jimmy Carter couldn't recover from. We should have, I wish we'd have known about that at the time. It would have given us a lot more insight into what we could expect from Ronald Reagan. One more text before we get to the phone lines. Hey, Joan, could you bring up what's up with Fetterman? He's the lone vote in the Senate that tanked the no more money for Iran bill. Yeah, and the military. Here's what I think about John Fetterman. I think, according to his staff, his previous staff, Fetterman is obsessed with social media. They said he would go into his office, shut the door, and spend hours going through social media because he wanted to see who was posting about him and what they were posting. They said it's an obsession with him. And here's why he's going to continue to vote with the Republicans, because it brings him a ton of attention. For a while, people were saying, he's probably going to switch parties. No. His staff says, no, he won't actually switch parties, because if he becomes a Republican, he's just another Republican. But if he's a Democrat who often votes with the Republicans, that gives him some power. The Democrats don't want to tick him off, and the Republicans are constantly wooing him. He leaves the party, becomes a Republican. He's just another name on the list. And they said he would never do that. He is much too aware of his public profile. He wants to be the guy people are talking about all the time, and this is one way he does it. So, isn't that cheery? Let's go to Chicago, where Keithan is on the line. Hey, thanks so much for the call today.
Hey, how you doing there, Joan?
How are you?
I'm fine. You do an amazing job, especially coming after Tom Hartman, Fran, and all of them, especially on Fridays. Y'all do y'all utmost. Y'all do the most, and I appreciate everything y'all do, because the programs at WCPT, especially Patty Vasquez and Lady B and all them, y'all do such a fantastic job as far as telling the truth, that it amazes me sometimes, and it forces me to call in. And I'm gonna get to the point, because I know you got a lot of callers. I call Donald Trump Boss Hog because, if you grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard, you kind of see what they went through and how America profiled themselves at one time. And it's like, for 250 years, anybody that's been America has always been scrutinized and polished and strove to be the best. I'm going to be a fireman when I grow up. I'm going to be the president when I grow up. I'm going to be a priest when I grow up. I'm going to be somebody spectacular, astronaut. They inspired to be the best, so they kept a permanent record kind of clean. how did all these crazy people like Todd Blanche and Trump and Epstein and all these gross, incompetent people, how did they even get through college where people struggling can't even afford to get through, but they got the $1 million contracts going through their hands and don't understand anything like Hegseth? How? I mean, I don't understand completely, but I understand when I watch the Dukes of Hazzard every once in a while. I understand how Boss Hogg called himself running. And, you know, Enos and them used to run around chasing Daisy Duke and Roscoe Pico train always covered up everything that Boss Hogg always did. Boss Hogg started the criminal activity, and then because America comes in and interferes with it, Roscoe comes in and turns up the whole town, chasing illusions, while the real criminals are just driving through the town. But
well, I've not heard a Dukes of Hazzard metaphor for the government. That's a first.
Yeah, I mean, how did it get this far, Joan? I mean, really, I can't. It used to be I couldn't even get a job if my record didn't show that I wasn't on drugs or I wasn't black, or it depended on the person that was accepting you into that firm or into that job or into that landscaping thing. That it took the person. How did my American people let these? I can't even watch. All I know is that this has got to be there's no way these people graduated next to me, went to college next to me, learned all the laws, grew up in America, learned American history, had to take the national anthem, had to sign up for the draft, had to do everything that it takes to be American. How did these people get on top of the world, the White House?
Well, that's the $64,000 question, isn't it? And we've said, how many books have been published about why this movement rose up, and did Donald Trump start it, or did he just take advantage of it, and where is this coming from? Yep. We've got 1,000 different answers to that question.
You have to ask yourself inside and say, how did I let this happen? And how do I get back to being
There you go.
American?
That's where we should be at right now. And how did we let this happen? And how can we make sure it never happens again? And how can we fix it and prevent it from recurring? I agree with you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
We have to ask ourselves, and we got to go inside ourselves to find out where we slipped up at.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it.
Thank you for taking my call. I love WCPT. I love all the shows, and I pray that Donald Trump and the department, he make a new department to restrict anybody from saying anything anymore.
Amen. Thanks for the call again. I want to share a text with you. Todd Blanche is in his fart around and find out era, and I love that for him. It's what he deserves. We're going to take a quick break. We've got a lot of callers to get to. We'll get on that right after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
It is Friday. We're going to take your calls and read your texts and talk about the news of the week till 3:30 today. Let's go back to the phone lines right now. Greg is on the line from Lake in the Hills. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Yeah, hey, Joan. Good afternoon. I'd like to first state that Camp David accordion, that was a good one.
Wasn't it?
But yeah, it was. But I'd like to. There was another part of that clicked with me. Instead of just the play on words there for that, I'd like to, maybe take it a little deeper and reflect upon the movements of Donald Trump's hands. My wife and I always refer to his hands as like an accordion move. That's one of them, where he does the accordion. He moves his hands in and out when he's talking.
Oh,
and then
God,
the other
yes.
one is.
It is. It's like he's playing an accordion. You're right.
Yeah, and the other one is where he's in his priest or cardinal or bishop or pontiff mode, where he starts going and doing the sign of the cross with his hands. He does that all the time. And I don't know. But anyway, that's not why I called, but that's what my mind got triggered to when I heard that excellent thing about the accordion. Anyway, the two reasons I called, okay, first of all, somebody else was talking about the guy from the senator from Pennsylvania, the guy who had the unfortunate stroke. Yeah. And, you know, I can't help but draw the comparison between him and Christian Curtsy Cinema and Joe. I love Cole Manchin. You know, and both of these people, in my opinion, it was all for the money and nothing more, nothing less. They got their pockets and other things lined with money out of that. And
for those of you who don't remember Kirsten, she was a senator from Arizona. She started her political life as a member of the Green Party. I mean, she was an environmentalist and a progressive, and over time, she became more and more conservative and started voting against Biden. And one of the people who used to be in her inner circle and was no longer in her inner circle said that everyone in her inner circle, Kirsten Sinema's inner circle, was telling her that if she just distances herself from Democrats and at least some of the time goes along with the Republicans, that she would be the perfect candidate to run for president. And as it turned out, she just made enemies of both parties, you know?
Yeah, and now she's got problems with her, what do you call it, her ex-husband now and everything like that. Last I heard, and because she was seducing some guy who was working with her on her campaign. You know, in other words, it's getting down to the point where she's actually become some level of being a whore, both politically and I guess sexually too. It's unfortunate, but
well, that's a harsh term. That's not a term that I like to apply to anybody. I really don't. I understand that you're disgusted with her, and I understand that she has fallen far from her original values. But let's just say that she's a bad person. Can we stick with that?
I apologize on the air for that because maybe it was uncalled for. I'll agree to that. My last point, my main point in calling is, you know, I was watching MS Now last night, and they had on the inspector or former CIA director Brennan, former director. And, you know, I keep looking at these guys. They come on. There's this other general who comes on he was on last night too. And they come on there, and there's an admiral who comes on here and there. You know, I find it laughable, totally laughable, that in a country where we've got so many guns and so much ammunition and artillery out amongst the public, that these guys talk about, how sad it is that the FBI has been dismantled and now we can't do anything. And it's like, well, wait a minute, guy. You mean to tell me you're a director of the CIA and you can't think of some way to gather together a group of people like Nixon did for the burglars, even though they were a bunch of clowns apparently? You know, in the Bay of Pigs, like George Herbert Walker Bush got together. You know, this is ridiculous. The government of the United States, our country's being taken over, and this Brennan guy and Steve Flaguzzi or whatever, I see him from time to time. These guys are a joke, and they're out there making money. They're making money off of telling the American people there's nothing they could do. These guys should be they're ridiculous. These guys should have already taken out, assassinated. And I know you don't like that term either. What else can we do with this?
You're kind of right about that.
Why? What is it all about? You know, General Flynn, that last point, General Flynn, did you hear he got paid out of a similar slush fund that they're Todd Blanche is trying to keep instated?
Yeah. Well, Flynn should still be in prison. And yeah, Flynn is nuts. And the funny thing is,
he's a big guy.
He didn't start out nuts, but he became nuts.
He's in charge. He's big up in the Christian nationalist movement. You have to look it up if you're not aware.
Yeah, years and years ago, before anybody else started talking about it, Mike Flynn said to a reporter, "Well, I don't see why we can't be a white Christian nation." I mean, this was years ago.
Yeah, I know. I've read a couple books on McVeigh about him blowing up the Federal Building, and in that book, it's an excellent book, and it talks all about these. These are the real terrorists. These are the white. They're out there. They've been out there for years down in the South. These guys are all out there, and they're the ones with the guns, and they're going to be, Trumps. There was a thing on one of the major news things about a 15-minute thing they were talking about. These guys are out there, and they're coming for, they're going to help Trump around the election time. These aren't the other guys who are with the mask. They'll really have masks, but they're not going to be even part of the DHS. These are the white nationalists.
Well, hopefully, Greg, we see it coming. We see the nonsense coming for the midterms, and I'd like to think that we're going to be ready for it. Doesn't mean it isn't going to be ugly and isn't going to be difficult, but I think we're ready for it. Hey, I gotta move on. I got a bunch of callers, and I'm running out of time. But thanks for the call, Greg. Let's go to our friend Dave from Hoffman Estates. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Joan. Did you happen to see on the news last night that massive iceberg turning over off the coast of Greenland?
Yes, wasn't that incredible? I saw a video of that on social media. It was wild.
Yeah, and it said it did a kind of a tsunami-like displacement wave.
Well, the video I saw was shot from way behind some houses, and so you couldn't quite tell the perspective, how close the water and the iceberg were to the village. But all I kept thinking is, oh my God, I hope those houses are empty because they're all going to be destroyed. How big was that iceberg? It looked like it was as big as the Empire State Building.
I thought they said it was something like a big, apartment type of, building, or maybe like the Empire State Building.
If you're listening to us and you haven't seen this video, look for it on social media. It is jaw-dropping.
It just rolled.
This monstrous iceberg that appears to be right off the coast of a village, and it just, it turns over.
Yeah. And I think it was on Miller's show, and with Fugel saying, I think he said on the podcast that he had spoke with Andy Bashir on there, and if I heard it correctly, Bashir said that McConnell's not in Kentucky, he's in D.C., he's in either some
the announcement from his staff is that he's in a rehab facility. Okay. He's been moved out of George Washington Hospital, and he's in a rehab facility.
Okay. So, to find out some proof on, and like I mentioned yesterday, either on your show or Hartman's, that talking about with these Patriot missiles and stuff like that, there's a story they're claiming that it's going to take at least 3 years. It says that the inventory have fallen from 2330 to between 759 and 827 missiles, according to these analysts in the
a lot of people are saying that, I don't know if you heard this, Dave, that I just read this, I don't know, last night or this morning. The blame for that is being put squarely at the feet of Pete Hegseth, because Pete Hegseth didn't understand that if you plan to wipe a country out and you're going to use $2 million missiles to do it, and you're fighting against $60,000 drones, that's stupid. There are better ways to conduct that. And they're saying it was Pete Hegseth's fault because it didn't occur to him. It didn't occur to him that, maybe we ought to, keep an eye on some of this and, only use what we absolutely have to use. What a thought.
Maybe he thinks he was on a video game or something, shooting the missiles and that. And then on those THAAD missiles, too, it said it decreased from 452 to between 234 and 278. But they're claiming, though, it's going to be at least 3 years. It could take military 3 years to restock its missile defenses. And like as for with China, I read something earlier the other week. They said that possibly the only thing that may be holding them back on doing one is the fact that their armies really hasn't had any experience with the fighting, with wars lately. And after they took a bit of a beating, I believe, in 1979 when they did this border war with Vietnam. And that's like the last any kind of fighting that they've done, more or less, from what the story had said. And that's the only thing that may be holding them back from, engaging with us, because that's all our guys have been in, basically, is war.
Yeah, really, war after war after war. Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Desert Storm, Kuwait. Yeah.
Bosnia.
We have a lot of military people, unfortunately, who have actual combat experience.
Yeah, but like I was telling you yesterday, that you were in Hartman again, probably. I mixed it up because where that the NATO, there's 3 NATO countries already that are going to go to South Korea missiles. There's to buy it. They're a bit cheaper and they got a bigger payload, kind of. And it'd be Norway and Norway, Estonia, and who's the third one here? Poland. Huh. They've been in negotiations with this Hanwha, for the missiles.
Well, and, all of Europe, I don't know about the other countries, but all of Europe now is they're really ramping up their defense production industries, because they used to figure that the United States would be the big dog and bring its weight to bear. And they're now saying, we're not sure how big the big dog is, and the big dog certainly doesn't sound like it's getting ready to help us out. So we better help ourselves. So, every country in Europe that I'm aware of, Germany's cranking up their defense industry. They made an agreement with France. France is a nuclear nation, and France has now agreed that they will extend their nuclear treaty with Germany. And that's never going to change. Donald Trump could be out of office tomorrow, and our allies will never, ever, ever look at us the same way, and they shouldn't.
Like they say, those 3 countries that signed contracts already with South Korea for the Hanwha aerospace, because, like I say, because of the payload's a bit bigger and production time is quicker, and like they're saying with the HIMARS, it could take 4 to 5 years, and they're not comfortable with waiting that long. So, anyway, listen, Joe, have a good weekend. Thanks for taking
Dave.
the call.
I appreciate that. We got a little bit of time for another call. Let's go to Ron, who's on the line from Chicago. Hey, Ron.
Yes. Why doesn't John Fetterman move to Kentucky so he can be the Republican senator from Kentucky and make everything easier for everybody?
Yeah. There's a lot of things about Fetterman that are kind of a mystery. Yeah. The big question is he going to run for re-election? And honest to God, I hope he doesn't. I think he's a guy who has a lot of problems, and I really hope he gets the help he needs.
Yeah, and the oil and gas companies are making record profits, and the major airlines are not far behind. Now they're going to be using artificial intelligence to schedule their air flights to.
Well, that can't be any worse than it is right now. Ordinarily, I'm not a big fan of anything being done by AI, but, maybe that's the one exception to the rule.
Let's see. And also, since last September, there have been 70 fishing boats that have been bombed, destroyed because they were suspected of carrying drugs. And this has not diminished the cocaine coming here. It hasn't. No, it has not. And, Donald Trump kept saying it was because they were carrying fentanyl. But our fentanyl for the most part, comes from China. So, you know what? It was an excuse. He wanted to be a big man. And, he felt that, going after somebody would be a great way to show the world he was a big man. Anyway, Ron, thank you so much for the call. One text I want to share with you. Hegseth is the embodiment of what waste, fraud, and abuse
really means. You are very correct. That's Trump's big thing. The blue states, they're full of waste and fraud. And, the blue states really should be asking for the federal government just to come in and run them, make all their decisions and pass all their laws. And because, they're filled with waste and fraud. Yeah. We are going to take a break, but I want to let you know that we are going to continue to take your calls and read your texts until 3:30 today, 773-763-9278. We'll be right back after the news.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
It is Friday. We read your texts and take your calls until 3:30 so we can spend some time talking about the news of the week. Let's go to the phone lines. Our good friend Jim is on the line from Chicago. Hey, Jim.
Hi, Joan. They haven't identified the individual extortionists who dreamt up this slush fund and the in perpetuity with the IRS. They haven't identified this person yet. And apparently he's whispering to Trump that don't let it go because it's foolproof. And I have to agree with him. Now, he could take this plan to any Tim Pat dictator around the globe, and then he could say the doorman wronged him, and then fill in the zeros. So, but now let's go to the Senate. These nutty Republicans are going to say that they're going to get some kind of a ironclad deal that Trump won't keep the money. When his whole family went to, they had to go to charity school. They ran a fake university.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go on and
well,
on.
That's when I first heard that it was being created, I thought to myself, yeah, he's going to maybe make 1 or 2 grants, and then he's going to decide that he is the most injured person of all of them. Therefore, the bulk of the money should go to him. You can see it coming.
No, absolutely. But why should anybody be surprised by it?
Mm-hmm.
He's pulled every criminal trick in the book from the insurrection. What about Jack Smith? He's holding on to documents for a rainy day, Joan. That'd be like me waiting my Social Security, but I've got documents I can sell to the Saudis or somebody.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And what Jim is referring to, how we all were laughing because Donald Trump took so many boxes of documents that should have been turned over to the National Archives or should have been reclassified. At first it seemed just like, I don't know, he wanted souvenirs, but there has now been reporting that there are agencies who believe that he took those documents, especially the classified ones, so that he could sell the information to the country or the entity that would benefit from it. And that sounds like the Trump we know.
Yeah, right, exactly. Senators know him, too. Please believe me. They know he's a crook, and every Republican votes for him knows he's a crook. But, Joan, real quick, if I can switch gears, you mentioned it was this week about World War I and how this thing is developing. Jordan, Egypt, I mean, everybody's involved in this insanity. Everybody's involved in this insanity. And then Trump is dangling a nuclear bomb to Saudi Arabia. You know how dangerous all this is? I mean, this is
wildly dangerous. And,
wildly dangerous.
Like I said, the lead up to World War I, it was a little thing here and it was a little thing there, and they all seemed small and unrelated till all of a sudden there was this accumulation of discord, and boom, we get World War I.
And I'm not anti-Semitic. I had a lot of Jewish friends, but as far as territory, that's starting it. Once you start grabbing people's territory, that's a dangerous business to be in, because I don't care if it's Putin or whoever it is. If you're trying to grab somebody's territory, you don't know what's going to happen. And that's a similar thing in World War I, too, because that was a lot of territory that shifted hands and off and on. But as far as the Senate is concerned, they're a joke. They're holding out with the Trump loan, take the $2 billion. I mean, come on, give me a break. I never saw him do anything. I mean, he's going to steal it, and that's all there's to it. Anyway, Joan, thank God it's Friday, and thank God the end of July is over.
It's the weekend.
With. Yes, and you have a good one. Thanks,
Thanks so much, Jim. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our friend Paul is on the line from Seattle. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hey, John, am I coming through okay?
Yes, you are.
Oh, good. I never know with Comcast these days. My phone can barely hold a phone call. But anyway, I can't stand the idea that people use the word Donald Trump's a genius at being a grifter or Donald Trump's a genius being a criminal. I hate that when people do that because we generally reserve the term genius for positive things. The only thing Donald Trump is incompetent, and that's not genius. And
right.
The fact that makes him seem like a genius is he's got all of these sycophants that are young people who he leads around by the nose. These young people who have careers, like you said, why would anybody sign off on your client berating you and abusing you on a daily basis?
Yep.
These people have
How
young
pathetic
careers,
is that?
young people with career. Yes, and they follow this demented, degenerated, stinky, crappy pants old man. I don't understand it.
Yep.
But one of the previous texters or callers, I can't remember, I think it was a texter who said, the first thing with Iran is that Donald Trump, the Trump regime, has never presented any interest-based negotiations with Iran. They've just simply threatened them, do what we say or we'll bomb you into oblivion.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of if that's all they're going to do, I think that's true, that Iran knows that they can stretch this thing out as long as they want to. They are playing yo-yo with
they
Trump.
are firmly of the opinion they can take the pain longer than Donald Trump can. And so far, it sure seems like they're right.
Even into the next administration, just like they did with the hostages. And, by the way, let's not forget, Donald Trump says, we've been at war with Iran for 47 years. Well, yeah, the Reagan administration, the Reagan regime, sullied those negotiations and had Iran keep the hostages, and they were released on January 20th, 1980. And by the way, after that, we didn't think they were so bad, remember, because the Reagan administration decided that selling TOW missiles to Iran was a good idea so that they could, they could fund both sides of the Iran-Iraq war.
Remember one of our earlier ceasefires, maybe the first or second ceasefire, and Donald Trump came out and said, well, yeah, we're going to permit them to have some missiles because, they need to have some missiles for defense. Oh, okay. All righty.
Yeah. Well, I think that the one thing is that if Trump thinks that he needs to have a knockout punch, because what Iran is doing now essentially is the rope-a-dope. Remember the Muhammad Ali, how he defeated George Foreman in the end of the 8th round. George Foreman had never gone more than 4 rounds with anybody. And Ali made him punch himself out. And that's kind of what Iran is doing, is that, and the way Donald Trump, the one thing I am worried about, the texter who said that, are they going to go to a nuke? And I brought this up with Edwin, and he refuses to discuss it with me. He says, Paul, that's not on the table. And he says, and what he said last week was that I hope no soldier would drop that bomb. But
I hope you're right.
About it,
and I have a terrible feeling that, we're going to be relying on the military to restrain his worst impulses. And it's possible that's already even happened, because remember he was going on and on about, really, really destroying them. And it was believed then that he was alluding to dropping a nuke. And then all of a sudden he stopped talking about it.
Yeah, the thing is that and as I said to Edwin, this is not an old school 12 o'clock high situation where you've got a pilot with a payload. This is a missile this is a bomb on the head of a missile, and that's all a long chain, and ultimately chain of computer commands where everybody in the chain has some degree of deniability. As they go, I just followed that, or all I did was say, go on that system. I didn't drop the bomb. It's a chain of command, a chain of computer things that launches the missile, and therefore there's a lot of deniability that of culpability. And that's what I think. That missile's fired from a submarine or a Navy ship.
Well, Paul, maybe they'll let Claude make the decision. Hey, Claude, what kind of bomb do you think we should drop? I'm just, over Iran. What do you think, Claude? God help us.
I think Claude would say, launch it and aim it towards Washington, D.C.
Well, if Claude if Claude cares about us at all, and who knows what Claude cares about, right? Oh, God.
This is going to go on. Yeah, this is going to go on ad infinitum. I really think that, and it's all based on, it's unbelievable that our system would allow this incompetent, deranged, and he said, the thing that made me laugh when he said, did Donald Trump just wake up this morning and decide, well, this and that? I said, no, he didn't just wake up this morning. He's been up all night. That's why he sounds so crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's why the whole sunsetting thing. He's up all damn night. That's why he's so demented during the day and screaming. And is that this is a guy who's on his way out. He's obviously has serious, he thinks he's aced his mental exam again. It's like, no, the reason I keep giving them to you is because, you don't give it to somebody who you don't think needs it. And he does. But we can't get to the November election soon enough. And I hope we can just get rid of this. The Democrats can bring it together, pull it together enough to really get rid of this party, because they are destroying America day by day.
Yeah. Yes, they are. The midterms can't come fast enough that, we may not be able to get rid of this guy, but for God's sakes, we can slow him down. Paul, thank you so much for the call. I got to get to a break. We are going to return with your calls and your texts right after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
Spend the first half of the show up until 3:30 taking your calls and reading your texts. Let us go back to the phone lines. Chi-Town Dave is on the line. Hey, Dave, thanks for the call.
Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon, folks, fellow comrades. I say that only, again, let me remind you, we're all communists now.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
You got to remember that. We're all communists now.
Yes.
According to the Republicans.
So, comrade, what would you like to say today?
Yes, what I would like to say, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. First of all, I don't believe Donald Trump's going to allow the midterms to even occur. What's going to happen, what I can tell you for sure I believe is going to happen is he's not, even if the Democratic Party wins, the Republicans are not going to allow them to be sworn in. Secondly, Donald Trump is never going to leave the White House until he dies. He's got a bunker that he's building. I found this out. I heard about this. He's got a bunker built way down in the basement, I guess. He's got a bunker. He is going to hold up down there.
Well, there was a bunker. There's always been a bunker under the East Wing, which, of course, he destroyed to build his ballroom. And they are rebuilding a bunker. I guess it'll be under the ballroom now. And
that'll be for the purpose of his holding up down there.
Well, I'm not even sure he would need to do that. I was just reading or listening to Rick Wilson, who has what used to be a Republican strategist, now spends all of his time going after Trump. And Rick said, I've been telling people for a long time, Donald Trump plans to run again in 2028. He said, I know right now there are people surrounding Trump who are looking at the laws and trying to figure out some kind of an approach, whether it's a loophole or something that they can misinterpret, to take to the Supreme Court to allow him to run another time. And he said, when I first started saying that, all my Republican friends were like, oh, you're crazy, just stop it. He would never do that, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, he will do it.
People aren't saying that so much anymore.
He will do it. He will do it, for sure. He will do it. If I were a gambler, I could bet money on it. That's another way he'll figure out to stop the 2028 elections. He will he will run again, and he will win. He will win again. He will win again because all the Republicans will vote for him. They worship him.
Well, he'll still have his base, but I think with the moves he's made, I think he's alienated. I saw a poll. Somebody was on social media was reporting a poll where they talked to people. Their audience was people who voted for Trump in 2024, and they asked them, if any of them had any regrets. And now these are these are hardcore Trumpers, and 17% of the people who voted for Trump reported in this poll that they regretted that vote. So I think he's still got his hardline base, but the independents, I think he's lost. And I think a lot of the Republicans, I think he's lost as well.
Well, even if he loses again, he's going to be holed up in that bunker. He's not going to leave. That's going to be a big problem. He's not going to leave because if he leaves, he knows he'll be facing a prison sentence. Although he's probably could declare immunity. He's already done that. By the way, I found out that when Donald Trump was a little boy, he used to throw food at the dinner table. He used to like to throw mashed potatoes. I
remember when the January 6th, when there was something going on at the White House. I don't know if it was the riot, and he was really ticked, and he threw his hamburger with ketchup against the wall. Yep.
Oh, yeah, he threw that against the wall. Yeah, so it's kind of an indication of what he did as a little boy. As far as the mashed potatoes, I'd rather eat the mashed potatoes, wouldn't you? I like mashed potatoes.
Mashed potatoes are wonderful, especially when they're dripping in butter and salt and pepper.
That's the way I like them. That's the way I like them. I wouldn't want to throw them. I would not want to throw. Yeah, Ronald Reagan did us a very dirty trick way back when. I don't think it was widely known at that time.
No, it wasn't.
It came out in a New York Times article much later on that I get the New York Times in Braille, and I was able to get it, and I read that article about what exactly happened with the Reagan people, the Reagan supporters going to Iran and begging the Iranians to hold the hostages. That was a dirty trick.
Yeah, it absolutely was, wasn't it?
Why did they do that? Why did they do that?
Well, because they wanted to win, and they knew that was Jimmy Carter's Achilles heel. And they were also afraid that if the hostages got released, there would be an upswell of support for Carter, and Reagan might not get elected. Yeah, it was just pure politics right out of a Richard Nixon playbook.
Yeah, exactly. Out of we were coming out of Richard Nixon anyway. Thankfully, we had Jimmy Carter. I didn't always agree with Jimmy Carter on a lot of things. I didn't agree necessarily with his energy policy that he wanted to get rid of big cars. I love big cars. I didn't agree with that, but of course that never went through anyway. His getting rid of all the big cars never went through anyway. So, but what we need now is electric cars.
Yeah, we do, among other things. And the fact that Donald Trump is trying to slow that down and promote fossil fuels, that is going to put us so far behind the rest of the world.
Yeah, with oil being over $100 a barrel now. I mean, why wouldn't he? I mean, the oil billionaires, they're making billions. They're making billions. I guess that's why he doesn't want to give up fossil fuel.
Yeah. Who knows? Dave, anyway, I got to go. Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. Always good to talk with you. Paul Shivari, we've got a couple of nominations in case, we have Lady B, but, and I suggested like Mr. P, which, we decided wasn't a great one. We got a texter who said, how about for you, matey C or matey P? Like we're pirates?
Like lady, like matey, like our matey. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
our matey C. I guess I have to say it like that if that's what we're... Our matey P.
A new pair of shoes, I'll put it on, I'll try it out, I'll walk around, see if it works, maybe purchase it after that.
No, okay. All right. I'm just going through the last of our texts here. While many of them are very good, not all of them can necessarily be read on the radio.
About me
Okay,
or
how
Trump?
about this one? Orange isn't afraid of punishment. He thinks we're all a joke. He's not concerned, and even less so after Garland, meaning Merrick Garland. Well, Merrick Garland certainly didn't do us any favors. And see, the thing is, and I could be wrong about this. I'm not as worried as other people about Trump running in 2028 because I don't think he's healthy enough to survive that long. I really don't. I mean, when you look at him, I think he is being propped up by the most experimental medicine and the most cutting-edge doctors in the world. But there's only so long you can prop up somebody who clearly has major medical problems and is 80 years old. And especially when they won't change their lifestyle, because he hasn't. You don't see him walking or exercising or eating right. I mean, he hasn't done anything to help himself. And, maybe he figures, what the heck, it's too late anyway. But I don't think we are going to, honestly, I don't think we're going to have him around very much longer, to be blunt about it. Real quick, because we haven't touched on the Epstein things. Remember, Katie Fang and the Public Interest Organization went to court and said that because of the Epstein Transparency Act, Blanche and the DOJ needed to release all the documents. And at literally 20 minutes before the deadline, they submitted to the judge in the case a bunch of documents they wanted the judge to read to see what the judge thought should and shouldn't be redacted. Not all the documents, remember, because there's believed to be 2 to 3 million more documents that we've never seen the light of day. So that's what they did. They dumped it all on the judge, but it's still, it's not like they're playing by the rules. It's not like what they're doing is up and up. It's still just a game to them to delay. Brendan Ballou is with the Public Interest Organization, the activist group that filed this legal filing with Katie Fang. And here is what he had to say today about where it stands.
Okay, quick update in our Epstein files litigation. We got a filing from the Department of Justice today saying that they had submitted to the court all the documents that they're supposed to show for review about whether they should be redacted or not. Pretty astoundingly, the Department of Justice is refusing to unredact a document that they say does not contain any victim information. The writer writes, and I'm quoting here, "The key are the 14 to 15-year-old girls. I am a sexual pervert because I say they are now of a reproductive age, ? DOJ is refusing to produce it. These are the people that they're protecting. So we're going to wait for an order for the court on which of these documents don't contain victim information and can be produced, as well as an order on the fact that DOJ has categorically refused to review foreign language documents and has refused to explain the redactions that it's made in thousands and thousands of documents. So there's a lot more to come. We're going to keep you updated once we hear from the court.
Part of the problem is a disagreement because the court said certain things should be redacted. People's names if they were victims, things that are really detailing child abuse in graphic terms. But Todd Blanche added to the list of things that should be redacted, like anybody in a position of authority, their information should be redacted. Hello, that's exactly who the Epstein perpetrators are. And Todd Blanche had a few other things that, these people, this should be redacted too. And nobody's ever agreed to those things but Todd Blanche. So we'll see what the judge says. We're going to take a break. We're going to get to the rest of the day right after this.
T820.
Every Friday, we talk to Chris Fitzsimon. He is part of a podcast called Stories from the States. It is a podcast that is a part of the States Newsroom Project. I've explained before, the States Newsroom is a group that believes that what is happening in your state legislature is really important for you, for your state, and frankly, for the rest of the country. So they have reporters stationed in every state legislature across the country. And one of the things that they do to promote some of that work is they do a podcast. And every Friday, Chris is here to tell us what is in this week's podcast. Chris, how are you?
I am well, Joan. How about yourself?
Did I tell you that Friday is now the first official day of the weekend? I declared that earlier this week because I
like
need a
that.
3-day weekend because 2
I
days
do too.
is not enough. So you and I, we're really enjoying our time together on this lovely weekend day. So I'm doing pretty well, all
That's
things
good. I love
considered.
to hear that.
Take us to Arkansas. What's going on
All
there?
right. Well, this is an issue that I've been working on a lot of my journalistic career, and this is just one small piece of it. I want to talk about that and then the larger sort of ramifications. But this week we talked to our amazing reporter in Northwest Arkansas, Antoinette Grajeda, who every year updates the tuition at private schools in the state of Arkansas who receive vouchers from the state of Arkansas. And in Arkansas, like in North Carolina and increasingly in other states, there are very few regulations about what a school has to be like, how it has to operate to get state taxpayer money, while of course they have a public school system that in most of those same states are underfunded, the teachers aren't paid well, and all the rest of the teachers don't have supplies. So every year Antoinette updates a database and finds that increasingly when the tuition is in place, many, not all, but many private schools increase their tuition so that people who want to go to those private schools have to still pay. The tuition doesn't cover all those because the private schools, what they want to do is, of course, is make money, a lot of them. So it doesn't help low-income kids financially. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, that is true. So we talked to her about that and about the regulation or lack thereof in Arkansas. And our conversation came not long after ProPublica published a story about a private school, the Delta Institute in Arkansas, that received state voucher money, a lot of millions of dollars. And they actually had an administrator there convicted of 11 felony counts of permitting child abuse and other crimes. Students were, it's terrific abuse. And one of the only licensed educator at that private school who did nothing to prevent the abuse and was in the room when a lot of it happened, she just got 6 months of probation, and she is still at the school, and the school continues to receive state voucher funding.
Oh my God.
So we are living in an era where anything goes at a lot of these schools because suggesting to regulate them, somehow you're against, I don't know what you're against, but I think it's something we have to come to grips with. It's almost too late. The erosion, not the erosion, I would say it's intentional, the degradation of our public schools, which used to be a source of pride in many communities. Yeah, and that's, vouchers and who should be able to get them is a real hot topic in almost every state. And but I think there's a real serious argument to be made that if you give a school voucher to anybody and everybody, you are taking money away from the public school system. If I want to go to a fancy schmancy private school, should I be able to get a government taxpayer paid voucher to knock off part of the cost of my tuition? I mean, that just encourages, that same argument takes place here in Illinois with charter schools. Oh, charter schools, they're so much better than regular schools and they should be allowed to use vouchers. Well, here's the problem. Charter schools, yes, they hire public teachers, but a charter school, if they don't like your behavior, if they don't think you're doing well academically or for any other reason, they can get rid of you. And a public school doesn't have that option. So where do all those kids go who can't learn or have disabilities or have behavior problems? They go to the public schools. And that's why charter schools have a tendency, oh, look, our kids graduate and go to college at higher numbers than the regular high school. Well, of course they do, because you've weeded all the other people out. I don't think it's fair. And in many states, the charter schools don't have to provide transportation, which automatically limits who can go. In many states, the charter schools have specific academic levels that a student has to reach before he or she can apply to go to the charter school, which means, of course, as you were alluding to, those are self-selected. And in Arkansas and in many other states now, that actually extends to homeschooling, where there is very little regulation. And so I feel like this is one of the underappreciated reasons why we're in the fix we are as a country and why so many people, and this has been going on for a couple of decades. And Diane Ravitch, a famous legal scholar, has written extensively about this. And there's a guy, Josh Cowan at Michigan State, who's sort of the new national expert on this, who we talked to a few months ago on the podcast. But all this, to me, makes it a little easier to understand why people are more susceptible to misinformation or disinformation, or willing to believe things that it doesn't seem like people would believe. I just feel like it's an undercovered story about the troubling direction that our country is headed.
Yeah. And with what's going on in Arkansas, and the way this is being abused, or at the very least misused, how are the people of Arkansas reacting to this?
Well, there's two things. One is there's always a call, there's always calls from some people in Arkansas, which obviously is a deeply red state run by Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who, are pushing for more regulation. And I think this ProPublica piece that was out a few weeks ago really has spawned or spurred a lot of new discussion about maybe we should regulate what charter schools are, what voucher schools, how they operate, who gets the money. In some states, they don't have to take the same standardized tests. We can't even measure them. But we're talking about literal physical safety and child abuse at a school when somebody was convicted of a felony, and the school still gets the money, and a person at the school still there who was there while it was happening. So at the very least, we need accountability structures in place for these schools. But I would argue that you mentioned the fancy schmancy private schools. That's the other thing. I think vouchers are in some cases sold as, here's a way to make sure everybody gets a quality education. Well, we're not giving everybody we can't afford to give and I don't want to, but we can't afford to give every kid a voucher to go to the fancy schmancy school. So you'd think what we would do is try to make the public schools as good as we can, keep that money there, and give every kid and every family the chance to get a good education. But it's just another way where we're sort of stratifying and dividing people. And a lot of these private schools started as so-called race academies in the South, where people were fleeing the integrated public schools. Some of those, not all of them, some of them have that history. It just seems like I thought we had gotten to a point there in the, 20, 25 years ago, before this really started in earnest, where the public school was a source of community pride, and everybody wanted to make it better, not just for their own child, but for everybody's kids. And everybody was working together to improve their community this way. And it feels like that has slipped away, or is at least slipping away in many areas.
Yeah, it feels like the good old days, back when things made more sense and things seemed to be more fair, and people seemed to care about that kind of fairness and even-handedness.
Yep. It really, I'll tell you one quick anecdote. I went to public school in North Carolina. And North Carolina has a famous Supreme Court case called Swan versus the Board of Education, which set the stage for desegregation and busing in the South. It was widely panned, but in Charlotte, it was a source of pride. And it became this, there's a couple books written about it. There were very few problems. This was in the late 60s, early 70s, very few problems in contrast with Boston and some other places that had a lot more problems. And people were doing well. People were getting along in Charlotte, to the point, this is my favorite anecdote, Ronald Reagan came there in Charlotte in 1980, campaigning for president, and stood before a rally of Republicans in Charlotte, North Carolina, and denounced what he called forced busing, and the Republican crowd booed him. That's the point. It was such a source of civic pride, briefly, that even Republicans were upset, and there were all these editorials, and people were mad that Reagan was complaining about something the community was proud of. But then fast forward 15, 20 years, and that has disappeared. And a lot of it, even though some of it was well-intentioned, I suppose, I would grant, but when you start slicing and dicing the schools and the communities into charters and vouchers and funding home schools, all that goes away. And now we're back to, it's almost like the best education for the fittest. It's like educational Darwinism or something.
Yeah.
We just can't, that is no way that I thought we all agreed that every child should have an equal opportunity, which means a quality school. But now that increasingly is not the case. And in Arkansas, it's harder to go to the best schools, even if you have a voucher. Vouchers take money away from public schools. And then we have schools behaving in this egregious, horrific way. They continue to get taxpayer money. The people of Arkansas are funding the school that is abusing kids, and it's still getting money.
Yeah. There's so many things, so very many things wrong about that. Chris, we need to take a break. We're talking to Chris Fitzsimon. He's with the podcast Stories from the States. We are talking about what those stories are this week. We are going to take a break. We'll be back with more after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are here to talk with Chris Fitzsimon about the Stories from the States podcast. Mallory Chang, who also coordinates with you and me and about this podcast, she said that you also could talk about a pro data center group. Now, that surprises me because it seems to me data centers are becoming the devil and nobody wants them. So tell me what this is about.
Well, this is about we almost, I feel like we have to talk about data centers every week because there are thousands. There are some states that have 60 and 60 on the drawing board, and I feel like every day, we have news from all 50 states, and we have our story meeting every morning. There's 8 or 10 stories every day. This one was a story that was done in Oregon, and we're going to talk to the author of this on next week's podcast. But there's an industry-backed group, and they have I think it's so far in 8 states. Maybe it's called, like in North Carolina, it's called North Carolina Connects or Oregon Connects or Kansas Connects. That's the name of the organization. And they are running ads to extol the virtues and all the benefits of data centers. They're trying to sort of quell the local
benefits
opposition.
of data centers. Let's see, was it
Yes.
higher electric prices or the fact that they suck off so much water, and the fact that they also really need literally a handful of people employed to keep them running so they're not even a big source of jobs? Which one of those things is the things that they're proud of?
Yeah, that's not what they're talking about, Joan. As you'd imagine, I actually was watching I was streaming something on Netflix, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and I saw these ads incessantly. And mostly what they talk about is the tax benefit. So if they're in a rural county, they buy a giant piece of property and they pay property tax to the county more than they used to collect on might have been an old farm or some land that wasn't produced, didn't have as high a tax bill. So that funds schools or helps fund schools. That's one of their arguments. And then I think they make some misleading claims, obviously, about the energy use. But you can, Trump had a meeting the other day, I think it was last week, with some red state governors, Republican governors, claiming that they were going to hold people harmless with the utility bills because he's all in with data centers and AI. But I've been reading so much about this just because it's such a big issue in the news. There are many political folks on both sides are now saying that it is sort of the sleeper political issue of the fall. And if you're running in a statewide office or for the state legislature or even the county commission, this is one of the 2 or 3 defining issues in the campaign. People want to know if there's going to be a giant data center in their communities that will, as you mentioned, most likely raise utility rates, most likely use water and or raise water rates. There's some talk of in some areas the noise pollution is something people are talking about. So it's really fascinating.
Noise pollution. Now that's something I haven't heard of before. I've heard of so many downsides to these data centers. But noise pollution, I would have thought that they were quiet. Aren't they just supposed to be filled with blinking lights, Chris? Just blinking lights?
Well, there are a lot of blinking lights, but I think the servers, there have been reports that there's like a massive hum, a continual hum in some communities. I don't know if that's true, but that's what some of the citizens groups are worried about. I think we talked a while back about one in Pennsylvania, which I think now they have abandoned, but they're trying to figure out what to do. It's a massive use on just the whole infrastructure of a small place, the energy, the water. Those are the biggest, I think, concerns. And, it's interesting. There's not national organizations fighting. There's a whole bunch of local organizations in many communities. And a lot of these are Republicans or Trump voters alongside progressive or Democratic voters. Nobody really wants these things. It's going to be a really interesting battle as the big AI policy battles and all the other stuff happen, that in the local communities, even people who maybe don't have strong feelings one way or the other about artificial intelligence do not want a giant data center, and they desperately need all these things. So they're going to have to figure out a way to either, I don't know what, I don't know where it's all going to come down, but it really is it's sort of the local organizing impetus now in a lot of places is to try to stop these things.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, because one of the big complaints about the data centers is they use so much electricity and electric bills go up. All of a sudden, people find that their electric bill is a lot higher than it used to be. Most of these data centers, at least the ones I've seen pictures of, they have flat roofs. I wonder why, and they tend to be out in the hinterlands. Why aren't they required to install solar panels? Now, I know a big problem with the data centers are keeping them cool. And if you have solar panels on the roof, that can create a heat in and of itself. So raise them up. Raise them up high enough so that there's a breeze underneath, because they're generally big enough. You would think the solar panels would generate enough power to at least take the edge off what the community has to provide. This is my idea. You may run with it.
I like that, Joan. Or how about this? If it's in the hinterlands, as you mentioned, what about making them buy a field beside there and putting a solar farm in to power it? Or I mean, there's a million things. At the very least. And some communities have tried to figure out ways to do this, is if, there's the question of the cost of electricity, which is the biggest one, obviously, but then just a strain on the grid. So there should be some ways. These companies have billions and billions of dollars. Surely there's a way they could devise that they could pay for their own energy and not burden the local system, whether it's renewable energy like solar, whether it's some other mechanism that they could pay for their energy. But so far that hasn't emerged, and that's one of the largest the large arguments against it. Although I did hear our president say the other day that you could tell a failing country because they had windmills. I don't know if you saw that. So the whole renewable energy debate is also, involved in this. I think, as you were just mentioning, there are ways to do this that make sense, but so far it doesn't feel like that's what the proposals have been. So
and why on earth? I guess just because he's a contrarian, Donald Trump decided that fossil fuels, that was going to be the be all and end all for his administration. When he's finally gone, we are going to be so far behind the rest of the world, particularly China, in coming up with wind power or water power or some other kind of sun power. That's going to be the future, because fossil fuels are limited. We will run out. And as we get closer to the bottom of the pile, they're going to get more and more and more expensive.
And it just makes my head explode. I've heard so many people in the United States Congress and in state legislatures, and Trump himself, say he doesn't like wind because or windmills or solar energy because when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, the lights will go off. Like the word battery apparently has not made it a part of their vocabulary. It is so insane. You're exactly right. And we're going to be way behind. I also saw recently, I don't know, our Pennsylvania outlet was reporting that the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant is going to come back online. I don't know if you saw the movie China Syndrome.
I certainly did.
1979. I was bringing that up the other day, and I felt like the old man in the room because nobody else knew what I was talking about. Maybe we should
that movie should be rebooted. That put the fear of God in this country about what could happen. And we had a couple of reactors in Illinois, and one I remember when I was on television on Channel 5, there was an investigative reporter by the name of Paul Hogan, and there was a nuclear reactor that was either just in operation or was being built. And some of the people who worked there shared with our investigative reporter that they were cutting corners. They weren't necessarily using the quality of materials that they were supposed to use, and that they weren't necessarily putting in the number of bolts, because they wanted to do it a little more economically. And with a nuclear reactor, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. No, I'd vote for extra bolts.
Yes, all the bolts.
You can't have enough bolts. I don't even know, whether the technology has improved enough, but I just threw that in as an aside because I thought it was interesting, but Trump mostly is talking about coal-fired plants, as we just talked about, and drilling and fracking. And, we just opened up a or they're trying to open up a forest in Ohio that's protected for fracking. There's a lot of those stories in the West about public lands, and they want to, drill for more oil, or they want to build more coal plants. It does feel like the whole renewable, we are, as you mentioned, we're not even just standing still while China and other places go on. We're going backwards, and it's going to be a big hole to dig out of.
Yes, indeed it is. Hey, I think we have time. Yeah, we have time. Let's talk about the other thing that Mallory suggested you were looking into, something about the Diné community protesting something that Trump was doing regarding mining.
Yeah, same thing. Sacred land. It's very simple. It's a very simple story. They have these sacred lands, and the indigenous people all over the country have been protesting in several areas where we had an agreement that we wouldn't open mines, or we wouldn't drill on this land that is very important to their history and culture. And now the Trump administration is pushing every day to do that. I don't know if Mallory mentioned this to you, that my favorite story of the week, however, we have one thing on the podcast when we do our weekly roundup at the beginning that we call One Last Thing. Did you know, Joan, that in South Carolina, you cannot give somebody a tattoo or have a tattoo parlor 1,000 feet from a church or a school or some other institutions? It's against the law. And South Carolina only allowed tattoos to be legal in 2004, and it's illegal now. If you want a little tiny tattoo on the back of your neck, it's against the law.
Really? Because of the location of the back of your neck is off limits?
Apparently, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but apparently, and the whole thing of it, there's this new craze of these I didn't know about it, very light, quick tattoos, that there's these pop-up tattoo places, and there's some guy in South Carolina, in Charleston, a very hip city, for lack of a better word, to show, again, how old I am, who wanted to do that, and he's told no, so now he's challenging the law. So now there's a big debate in South Carolina about whether or not you should be able to have someone give you a tattoo within 1,000 feet of a church or a school and some other buildings. I mean, that's a long way. That's blocks and blocks. Think of Chicago, how far 1,000 feet is.
Is there fear? Okay, maybe you could, those silly, immature children, they're going to get out of school. They're going to run right into the tattoo parlor, and God knows what they'll look like when they come home. Maybe you could make that argument. But the people, now you're worried, oh my God, everyone's going to leave church and go get a tattoo. That doesn't seem to hold the same kind of water.
No. And the ultimate worry for the Trump administration would be somebody got a small, tiny tattoo of like a windmill. Imagine that. That would be the worst.
God. You're bad. You're really bad, Chris. I like the way your mind works. I do like the way your mind works. There's you've got so much information coming in from all the states. It's like, say, here in Illinois, is there a newsletter that is specific to Illinois? How do we get the reporting that your organization, your umbrella organization, is doing?
The best way to do it for everybody is just to go to newsfromthestates.com, which is just one site where all the news comes in, and you can sort there by state, by topic. You can click on immigration enforcement and see what's happened today, which a giant story happened today that we don't have time to get into it. But the Trump administration wants to end funding for lawyers that help unaccompanied kids in immigration court. So we're not going to have kids aren't going to be able to have lawyers anymore. Or you could click on data centers or voting rights or whatever it is. You could follow the Illinois news from Capital News Illinois. Anyway, that's the best way to do that is to go to newsfromthestates.com, and you can sort it any way you want.
Great. Because I think that what you guys are doing is so important. I'm regularly banging the drum here. Yes, with the congressional races and the Senate races, those are sexy, and you're going to, read all about them. But if you want to pay attention to the people who really affect the way you live your life day to day, that's your state reps, that's your state senators, that is your local officials, that is your local judges. Those are the people, those are the races that nobody wants to, oh my God, there's 50 judges. I have to decide whether or not I'm going to retain them. Well, you know what? Do your homework, because you're much more likely to show up in front of that judge than you are to be called to testify in front of a Senate committee. And I really think that what you're doing is so important.
Well, thank you. One of the things that I think, like Capital News Illinois is the folks that we use in Illinois. They do a great job. And one of the other things we do on the national side is you can see stories that connect all these things. Vouchers in Arkansas are the same bills that write, the Alex and all the other people that are trying to hurt trans people or give vouchers away or prevent, renewable energy. It's not just happening in one state, it's happening in a bunch of states, and it's all orchestrated and organized. And that's another way you can keep up, is to find out, if you're worried about something in your state, what's happening in other states. So that's another thing we try really hard to work on.
Well, you do a great job, and I am so glad to be able to promote what you do here on our little radio station. Thank you again for being here today,
Thanks,
Chris.
John. Absolutely.
Chris Fitzsimon, Stories from the States is the name of the podcast. You can get it wherever you find your podcasts. We are going to take a break for news, and when we come back, we are going to have a little fun. Rebecca Ford and Scott Duff are going to be here, and we are going to talk in a very interesting, enlightening, and very silly way about our favorite movies and television shows and plays and other entertainments. A great thing to think about before we go into the weekend. We're going to be back right after the news.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Once a month, film critic Rebecca Ford, radio host Scott Duff, and radio host Joan Esposito get together to talk about the things that we have been watching, TV, movies, plays, and what's worthwhile and what isn't. Welcome, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm great and looking forward to the weekend.
Yes. And Mr. Duff, how are you?
I am doing quite well myself. How are you doing?
Well, you may not have heard, but I decided at the beginning of this week that I need a 3-day weekend. I can't function without it. So I've declared Friday is actually the first day of the weekend. So, it's great. It's the first day of the weekend, and what could be better?
Oh, I know. And you're getting ready to head downtown for Lollapalooza, right?
Well, I realized the last time I was there that I had perhaps aged out of Lollapalooza.
Oh, you ain't just whistling Dixie, let me tell you. I get panicky just thinking about it.
I have to tell you, I live in the South Loop, and I was taking an Uber yesterday, and we were stuck in traffic for so long that Uber contacted me and texted me and said, "We noticed you've been stopped for a long time. Do you need emergency assistance?"
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah.
So I didn't know they offered that service, but 20 minutes to travel 2 blocks.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Well, I had an early lunch with a couple of my friends, one of whom took the train up. And when she was taking the train back toward downtown, she texted us that she was on the train with the Lollapalooza crowd, and there were lots of sparkly shorts everywhere.
Yes.
Sparkles. My whole neighborhood is just filled with glitter and sparkles, and surprisingly muted colors.
Oh, well.
Interesting.
I guess that's the more mature version of sparkly pants. I don't know. Hey, both of you guys saw The Odyssey. Everybody I know who's seen The Odyssey has had great things to say about it. But, like I said, my weekends are very short. And when I think of committing to a 3-hour film, basically there's your entire afternoon, and I just haven't been able to bring myself to do it yet. Scott, why don't you start? What did you think of The Odyssey?
It is incredible. It is.
Now, did you see it in IMAX?
No, because the entire city of Chicago this weekend was seeing it in IMAX. You could not find a seat except for the front row. And I'm like, I am not going to be looking up, Matt Damon's nose for 3 hours. But it is one of those movies that, like, I really do want to see it again. I would like to see it on a bigger screen and with a louder sound system. For me, it really was like a complete achievement in filmmaking and storytelling. First off, don't let the 3-hour running time scare you. It moves along. Like Christopher Nolan keeps the story just pushing forward. It is a relentless 3 hours.
Wow.
And some of the performances are just like out of this world fantastic. I the entire time I kept going back to gosh, I can't even remember. I'm not even sure if I ever read the Odyssey when I was in high school, but being a good, Greek mythology geek and nerd, and studying, in through college, like performing, like being classically trained and knowing the Greek tragedies and knowing the stories, really, really helped. But the entire time I was watching it, I need to give a big old shout out to the Goodman Theater, because what kept going into my head was Mary Zimmerman's adaptation and production of the Odyssey. Oh, before they were like back in the old space, back in the 90s. And one of the things that Christopher Nolan captures in this film is the breadth and width of what a myth is. Myths are wide. There are stories within stories within stories, and it keeps kind of unfolding until this big wide spread is in front of you. Uh, I loved the storytelling techniques, the flashbacks that he would have. I can't really recall. I'm pretty sure I didn't read the Odyssey, but I have read Mary Zimmerman's script, and I remember it all these years later about how it really is like you go and you're off onto this one story, but then while you're in this story, a character says, "Well, do you remember this?" And they'll take you to another story, and it just keep kind of rolls out, and then it comes back in on itself to pick up and carry you forward for the rest of the movie, the epic. It is phenomenal storytelling, and Samantha Morton, stop it, just stop it.
Who is she?
She plays Circe. Um, so for folks who might not be familiar with the Odyssey, you have our good friend Odysseus, who has been he went off to go fight the Trojan War, and it has taken him 20 years to get back. Meanwhile, his wife Penelope is in Ithaca. She is waiting for Odysseus to return. She has her now adult son Telemachus. You got Tom Holland and Anne Hathaway, who are basically just holding down the fort, waiting for him to come back. But in the meantime, Ithaca and the castle is now inhabited by these suitors who are all trying to vie for her hand to become king. And the Odyssey really is a bunch of mini stories of how Odysseus returned back home in the war, like from the war. I feel like I'm blithering. Rebecca,
No, not at all.
Well, let me just say that I went to a public school in Gary, Indiana, and I assure you that I did not read the Odyssey then or since then until quite recently. And I think one of the things that makes stories like this come alive for people now is having somebody who's really excited about it engage with you on it. And so people who become classicists say, well, and I had this teacher, like there's a woman named Danielle Allen who used to head the humanities department at University of Chicago, who said, oh, well, there's a guy at Princeton who just blah, blah, blah. And then her whole thing became interpreting like Greek stories into modern languages. So I want to say that, well, I've seen the movie twice. So I saw it once.
Wow.
I saw it once and I thought, wow, that's a movie. I wonder, hey, what was this whole thing about? And there are two recommendations that I would make about the coming alive. So if you want like an easy way to communicate with enthusiasts, there's a podcast called The Rest is History. And I learned about this podcast when they were talking about the British side of the Revolutionary War, but they also go through the Odyssey, and they're like two classicists who just say, and then this happened, and then he does this, and then he does this, and then he does that. And so you know what the original story is. And then to listen to it on audio, there are a bunch of interpretations. There's a woman named Emily Wilson who did like a very famous one, but I listened to the one that was a modern translation and was read by Dan Savage of Downton Abbey. It was brought to me by a friend, right? So you know, this. I don't think you can go to this movie without saying, well, what? And then what really happened? And then Elon Musk is making such a to-do about it that it's like, well,
Yeah.
what is he complaining
Well, you
about?
know, he's not the only one. Emily Wilson herself, and Chris Nolan said that her book, which Emily Wilson put out what I think is the most recent translation of the Odyssey, and she tried to do it not through a male lens or not trying to overly stretch the text to make Odysseus a bigger hero than he was. She tried to do a word for word accurate translation, and it is being viewed as by a lot of people as a very sort of feminist take on the Odyssey. And Chris Nolan said that her book was part of what he based his film on, and she is not happy about that. In the London Review of Books, she wrote this big, huge article, and one of the quotes is that she would have been ashamed to have written any part of the script. Her takedown was so brutal that in The Guardian, Joyce Carol Oates wrote an essay rebutting Emily Wilson, who's rebutting Chris Nolan's production. And what is it? Joyce Carol Oates said something like, Emily Wilson was speaking in the crude language of MAGA when she attacked someone whose ideas differed from hers. So, man, oh man, this has been a movie with a lot of side stories, shall we say.
Well, Emily Wilson has walked that back. I mean, she has a misfortune of being like somebody who's been in a room by herself writing Greek stuff.
Well, you know, yes, but it was a 4,000 word article, so that's a lot to walk back.
She wrote this 4,000 word article, but the 4,000 word article was really about how there's no character development in the movie, and then they left out the most memorable things about the Odyssey. So there's like a little thing back and forth with the Cyclops that's left out. The whole point of the Odyssey is that every time you try to do something, the gods come in and they mess everything up. So like no really real discussion of the odds. Cersei, who Samantha Morton is like this middle-aged hippie witch woman, where Cersei was like this goddess with a palace, like in the real thing. There's no sex. All right, so he's on an island with Charlize.
That's Calypso.
Yes, Calypso.
Yes.
And for 7 years eating lotus, right? And they don't mention that, even 3,000 years ago, they just said, well, and then all they did was, to lay together, and so Emily Wilson also has kind of has said that, her Odyssey book, she tried to stick to the same like number of lines and to stick to a poem form, and she was successful in doing that in her translation that didn't add judgmental stuff about the women involved. He doesn't call them whores and sluts and stuff like that. But she says she's working on a new translation of the Odyssey where she can use more words, that was a parameter that she wants to let go of because she wrote a successful Iliad in translation, and she felt like having the opportunity to use more language was something that improved her content.
Interesting.
So she was right when she says that there's no character development in the movie. There's not, but we don't ask for it. And like, what Marvel movie has character development? We bring our own baggage to these movies, especially when we know the characters. And just one last thing to say is that here, this character isn't really like the character in the poem. This guy, Matt Damon, in this Odyssey is like Atticus Finch, where the Odysseus in the poem, he's like Ben Affleck, right? He's like a trickster, and he gets away, and everywhere he goes, like things mess up, and like people follow him anyway. And so somebody said something I thought was brilliant was that Chris Nolan has worked with Tom Hardy before, and so he's like a hot macho guy who would stay on Calypso Island and have sex for 7 years, and he's the guy who people would follow. And so it's a movie about a myth. So Christopher Nolan made his movie, and it's a real spectacle.
Yeah. And I just want to, as long as we're also talking about book versions of things, Madeline Miller tells the story of Circe. I don't know if either of you have read it. It is a feminist retelling. Because remember, Circe is the woman who turned men into pigs. But if you read Madeline Miller's book, you understand why she's turning them into pigs. You are you're there for her to turn them into pigs. It's really, really, really beautiful. Wonderful story.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the man should be quiet about like talking about feminism. but I will say, like, there were, as Rebecca was saying, like, this is his interpretation. And I felt that, like, all of, like, Circe, you felt I understood why she was doing this. Like, I got it. With Calypso, I thought the sexiness was implied. I mean, how could it not be implied? You have the Charisse, Theron up there just looking amazing. But what made it more despicable was the fact that she needed him to stay there for those 7 years. That's what I took away from watching that the scenes with when he's kind of trying to remember because he's drugged on the Lotus and he wants to know how long he's been there, and she just wants him to stay because she needs him to. As opposed to just, I mean, for me, the sexiness was implied, maybe because I just knew the character, but it was something about, like, there was something darker and deeper.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
In the original, she kept him there. He was her sex slave.
Yeah.
The gods had to intervene to release him so he could go home. And she's like, why do you want to go home? And all the associations we have with Calypso, like Harry Belafonte and the Caribbean. It's like, why would anybody want to go home?
And
right?
the John Denver song. Don't forget that.
So we have to. So the gods had to intervene to make her release him. And then also on the issue of feminism, in the original, the suitors who've taken over the palace while he's gone and are trying to marry Anne Hathaway, who's Penelope, are sleeping with her maids. Right. And so there are 12 maids who are executed at the end. And so in the 19th century translations, they started calling them whores and sluts and stuff like that. And so in the Emily Wilson translation, they take that out. Right. And in the movie, they don't address that at all. But these women had to die because these men imposed themselves on them. And Penelope ad, did Margaret Atwood write that? Was about the waiting for him to come home, Penelope waiting for him to come home, and the fate of these women who had been abused.
I'm not familiar with that. I don't. Margaret Atwood is a little dark for me. I have a hard time. I respect her. I think her writing is great, but I don't know if you guys have found this, but with everything going on in the world, my tolerance for drama and things that are maybe beautifully artistically done but are dark, my tolerance for that is extremely low these days. It just isn't. I don't have the bandwidth for it. Do either of you feel like that?
You've mentioned that before, Joan.
Yes.
So, you know what I'm reminded of? I was a camp counselor at Camp Martin Johnson out of the Hyde Park YMCA, and we had camp up in Michigan. And on Visitors Day, all the cabins would do skits for the parents. And so the boys' cabins would always do the skit where they would two sides would meet each other, and then they would have sticks and stuff, and then they would fight. And then that was great, right? And I feel like, well, that's what so many of our stories are about. Everything with a chase scene, watching The Rookie on TV. It's all like you find a problem and then you fight. I mean, and so there's so much of that in the Odyssey. I was thinking like this is like Errol Flynn on
Yeah.
base. You just go from place to place. There's a monster there. There are bad guys there.
Oh yeah.
And then you fight. And then I was also thinking that, you know what, this is like Ulysses Grant, who the way he fought, he just like, you kill everybody. That's the way you go. You just do that. And then it occurred to me that Ulysses is the Latin for Odysseus. And he went to West Point, and he must have had like a classical education, on some level. So he must have been inspired by, this ancient work.
Well, even though I haven't gotten around to seeing the Odyssey yet, I think that Matt Damon has been telling, some really interesting stories as he does the press junket. It seems a little bit more grounded than the typical kind of silliness that you get, trying to be amusing. And he's talking about how every day on that shoot, he said every day on that shoot was equal to the hardest day I've ever had on any other movie. Like, they went to this one site and they were going to be shooting at the top of this mountain. And Matt Damon said, and of course, we had to walk there. There were no roads. There was no transport. So everybody walked all the way up. We did our shooting and then we walked all the way down. And it's really fascinating what it took to make this movie, especially technically, and the how they had to adapt the IMAX cameras to function. Because, apparently, I didn't know this, maybe you guys did, that IMAX cameras make a lot of noise when they shoot. And of course, if you're going to do emotional or up close scenes, that isn't going to work. So then they figured out a way to put the IMAX camera in a soundproof box. I mean, the stuff that was involved in the making of this film is absolutely fascinating, I think.
Yeah, I think Scott touched on that before. Like, this is a technological miracle. And so in all the things that you just mentioned, on top of that, the 70 millimeter film that they use in the IMAX only runs for 2 minutes. So this 3-hour movie where they're like in a boat and in a desert and they're on fire and all this kind of stuff, they can only do 2 minutes at a time. So you're in your head, you're killing this guy, and it's like, cut, we're gonna reload the camera, and then 2 more minutes, and that kind of thing. And so this spectacle is a marvel on a number of levels.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Man, I can't believe you saw it twice. A 6-hour commitment. That just blows me away.
I would see it again.
Really?
Yes. 100%, because there's so much that you'd like to take in, and just, did you see it on like a larger screen the second time, or?
Well, I saw it on IMAX the first time, and I saw it on 70 millimeters the second time. And 70 millimeters is just very large film, so it's not digital, it's film. But there are only 25 theaters in the country that have 75 millimeter and IMAX together, and the one in Chicago is in Woodridge, and so it just wasn't impossible. I have a friend who went to a 7:00 a.m. show.
Wow!
Wow! And 2 a.m. shows are available. But, one day, I think I really have to go out and see it in the IMAX 70 millimeter. But, my God, how much nuance do you need to get the point of this giant,
Right.
Like go to the AMC, you're not gonna, you know, miss out on too much. And there's so much to take in.
Well, we need to take a break. And when we come back, Scott, I don't know if you saw this, but Rebecca saw 72 Hours, and she said it's the same story structure as The Odyssey. And Kevin Hart is the new Jerry Lewis. And if that doesn't pique my curiosity, I don't know what does. Rebecca Ford, Scott Duff, and I will be right back after this.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Rebecca Ford, Scott Duff, and I are talking about movies and other things that we've seen. Scott, did you see 72 Hours, which is apparently a new Kevin Hart movie?
I have not seen
I have not either. Rebecca, we are in your capable hands. Tell us why Kevin Hart is the new Jerry Lewis.
Well, so yes, it's about dignity or lack thereof. But 72 Hours is a movie about Kevin Hart is a 40-year-old ad executive who's going to get fired unless he learns to connect with younger consumers. And he's accidentally invited through, missent text to a bachelor party of some 20-year-olds in Miami. And so he goes there and attends their bachelor party to observe them and get the feel of what 20-year-olds are doing these days. And through mistaken identity, they get stuck in a middle of a drug deal, as one does. And hilarity ensues through many adventures, some involving whale penises. And so the cast, yes, it's quite crude. And the cast, but it was number one. It debuted at number one on Netflix. And so, but the cast has Kevin Hart, whose fiance is Tiana Taylor, who's a pediatric surgeon, of course. And the cast also has like Saturday Night Live guys. So Marcelo Hernandez, Cam Patterson, who's like the new black guy, and Ben Marshall, who's like the tall, redhead, goofy guy. And so they're all on this trek through Miami together. And so like Odysseus, you know, he has his friends and his men follow him. And then they're like, you know, can we really trust this guy to, you know, to get us out of trouble and to get us back home? And they meet monsters, like in the form of drug dealers. They face betrayal. They conquer lots of enemies. They have fights, and in the end, they learn that there's no place like home. So this is the classic Odyssey. The Odyssey is the basis for like 99% of Western storytelling. It's Wizard of Oz.
It's the hero's journey.
Yes, and it's 72 Hours starring Kevin Hart.
You know, Kevin Hart is somebody that I really want to like, but his over-the-top approach to storytelling and humor always, I don't know, it seems a little forced to me. It doesn't, I don't know, there's something about it. I want to like him, but he's just too over the top for me in a way that doesn't really ring true. So I guess maybe I'm just a crabby Appleton.
Well, no, I mean, he's actually quite controversial. He just makes lots of money, right? Yeah. And so
why is he controversial?
Well, because because of his minstrelsy, right? And so do you really, it's kind of like dwarf throwing, like in a way, and he's willing to tolerate it. And so and you know, and because of it, he rakes in the big bucks. And that's why I compare him to Jerry Lewis, because Jerry Lewis was a very slapstick guy who did a lot of antics. He was willing to sacrifice 100% of his dignity, and he was a big hit. I don't know if Kevin Hart is a big hit in France. I should look that up. I should look that up before getting on the show today. and it's Punch and Judy. It's and and it's comedy as old as time. And he was recently roasted on Netflix, and that roast was very controversial because he brought in white comedians who are known as racists. And they came in and they made their race jokes. And it's like, well, you kind of should know your audience because these jokes are not going to land in this context. And so, Kevin Hart, why did you invite these people in? But once again, ratings, ratings, ratings. So,
You guys both saw the movie The Invite. I talked to somebody recently who said, I went to see it because it got such great reviews, but they didn't think it was as funny as it had been billed, and they found it a little bit kind of sad.
Yeah.
First of all, Rebecca, explain what The Invite's about.
Well, so there's Olivia Wilde and Seth Rogen are a couple who are kind of struggling, and they both have anxiety, and they live in a big apartment that he inherited from his um, parents, but they're not where they want to be in their lives, especially him because he's a musician and he teaches music to kids, and it's not clear whether they don't care, but it's clear that he doesn't care. And she has a lot of anxiety, and so she's a difficult person to kind of deal with when you're coming home from a long day. And the neighbors upstairs, who are Ed Norton and um,
Penelope Cruz.
Penelope Cruz, have lots of really loud sex. And so she's invited them down because she wants to meet them, and he wants to complain to them about how loud they are, and it's disruptive to them. So the neighbors do come down, and the Seth Rogen and Olivia Wilde couple are not in concert about how they're going to approach and deal with the neighbors. And it turns out the neighbors are polyamorous, or they are swingers. And so they broached the topic of swinging with Seth Rogen and Olivia Wilde.
Okay. And do hijinks ensue?
Kind of. I mean, the way I've been describing this film is kind of a sexy, funny Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's four people in an apartment. That is the movie. You could not be more polar opposite from the Odyssey.
Right.
Than with this one room. It's like you're here. I mean, there are rooms within the apartment, but it's like there's something so I think Olivia Wilde, her direction on this film is spectacular. Like this is almost another completely different thing, but I find it to be almost a perfect film. They were trying to build it as like a comedy, but it is definitely more of an examination about, married life and compromises and how do you move forward and how do you move through things and what happens when temptation comes literally to your door. The performances were fantastic. Just watching Olivia Wilde quickly and deftly dispose of a burnt souffle was hilarious. Like there are moments that you are laughing out loud, but there are also a lot of moments of, I might be tipping my cards too much, but I was like going, ouchie. I recognize myself in this. Like, maybe it's not the most healthiest of situations, but the performances from all four are just spot on. I always like to say, it's so funny we're talking about Kevin Hart, but I'm like, if you always want to find the best dramatic actors, go to the comedians because they know how to tell the truth. That's because there's, truth in comedy. And Seth Rogen was fantastic. Olivia Wilde, I am now her biggest fan. Based on her performance in this, she is a bit of a neurotic mess, but she's always engaging, and she's like, you can't. It's fun watching her own brain kind of ping pong through all of these scenarios. Uh, Penelope Cruz is, just being a Penelope Cruz, who is herself just, she's sexy, she's enigmatic, she's smart, she's funny, she's very, very strong. Ed Norton does a great job of being kind of like, you feel like, oh, you're this like new agey, that's for lack of a better word, woke. Like this sort of stereotype, but you're kind of like a little skeeved out by it, but then their stories become more clear as everything goes on. Like it really is. I would love to see it on stage, actually.
Really?
Right?
Yes. That was my impression, is that
Mhm.
it's a chamber piece and that it's like a play.
Was this movie an adaptation of a play, or was this
Nope.
written for the
Original
screen?
script. Original script.
Who did Olivia?
No, I
Oh,
know
no.
Rashida Jones.
Rashida Jones and
She's one, and I forget
adapted it from
a Spanish film, I believe.
Yes. Okay. All right.
Sorry. Yeah, there we are. But it is, yes.
Yes. And but it is like a play because it's so it's claustrophobic, actually, in a way. And so the characters, I mean, they come in. We've described to you a super anxious hand-wringing couple and a swinging couple, but you learn more about each of them as it goes on. And so as more information is revealed about each of the characters, you kind of change your mind a bit. And ultimately, just like the Odyssey and just like Wizard of Oz and just like
72 hours.
The theme is there's no place like home. And so is that a spoiler? And also, I thought it was a redemption film for Olivia Wilde, who is going to have a non-redemption film out called I Want Your Sex out, that I think it's coming out this weekend, maybe today.
I just saw an ad for that on my social media this morning, but I didn't open it up and read about it. I just kind of skipped over it because I thought there's some guy who's starring in the I Want Your Sex who that was the article was about him.
Yeah, he's the guy in the Holdovers. It was
which is another thing I never saw.
Well, that was another thing. But if you recall, Olivia Wilde, has two children with Jason Sudeikis and left him, and then she was dating Harry Styles, who's like 10 years younger than her, and like all the Harry Styles fans, made her life miserable, and then the divorce guy, the summons server served her when she
I remember she was on stage.
Stuff like that.
She was on stage doing a panel discussion, and the guy walked up and handed her an envelope, which was her divorce papers. And Jason Sudeikis apologized profusely for that happening. But you never know. He claimed that he didn't have anything to do with that, and he would never have signed off on that. But man, oh man, whew.
Yeah. So she's had it. I believe that people dislike her. I don't know anything about her personality, which could be terrible, but I think people make her pay for being smart and beautiful and sexy and having Harry Styles, right? And so in this film, the character she plays is, I wouldn't say she's homely, but she doesn't lead with any of that. Like none of that is stressed in this movie. They're a couple and they're just going through some stuff, and they look at this other sexy couple and they think, oh well, they must be living the life, but everybody finds out more about each other. And so I was happy for Olivia Wilde that this is getting positive reviews. I don't know if anybody's going to see this movie except us. But I think she needs some
Yeah.
she needs something positive in her life. And so I think she, in the next movie that's being released at the same time, it's going back to, sexy dominatrix.
Yeah. Well, we need to take a break, but along those lines, when she was in town, I was really, really good friends with Deborah Norville, who was, quite frankly, one of the most beautiful human beings who's ever walked the earth. And I saw up close and personal, like, yes, there were advantages she got because of her beauty, but there was also such a downside to it, of people who figured if you're that pretty, you can't be smart, or, you must be evil inside. I mean, it was a real life lesson to be her good friend. Guys, we need to take a break. I'm talking to Scott Duff and Rebecca Ford. We are going to take a break, and we'll be back with more after this.
Don't turn that dial.
A dangerous mistake to make.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now on WCPT 820.
Once a month, Rebecca Ford, film critic Scott Duff, radio host, and I get together to talk about what we have been reading or seeing, whether it's live on stage, on television, or in the movies. And, Rebecca, you said that, the Invite and the Odyssey, that everything, there's like a theme where there's no place like home. And I said that, I'm having trouble focusing on anything with too much depth. So I can say the theme for what I've been watching is sci-fi, sci-fi, sci-fi.
Come on now.
Monarch, Legacy of Monsters, which is the modern Godzilla story. And this is a little known fact about Joan Esposito. She once owned every Godzilla movie that had ever been produced. Yes,
What?
she did. Yes, she did.
What happened?
What happened? Yes.
Well, I think they're in a box somewhere. I haven't been able to find them. I've been going through the boxes, but so far all I've been able to find is the Disney stuff. But I'm telling you, even the Japanese ones that are subtitled in English, I have been fixated on Godzilla for I don't know how long. I don't really know for what reason.
Wow.
Pardon me?
Yeah. Film festival.
Yeah, really. The other thing, I watched Fallout, which is sci-fi based on a video game. And generally, I don't like things. I'm leery of things that are based on video games. But I didn't know it when I started watching it, and it's really quite good. The show that made Walton Goggins a star after how many years of being an actor. And of course, the new Star Trek series that's out, which is, I told you it was Discovery, but it's not Discovery. Discovery wrapped up. This is Strange New Worlds, the one with Anson Mount. So there you go. If you want to talk about aliens or outer space or monsters, I'm your gal.
Look, we've decided that there should be another genre of movie called cootie movies.
What's that?
Where you have your protagonist is being chased by a cootie, whether it be like an alien, a monster, a giant bug, something. It is one of my favorite genres of film on the planet. Whether it's in space or if it's like in a jungle or in a house, give me a cootie movie any day of the week.
Well, I love that. I think we have just created that genre. And, tell me what you guys think about this. I know that, was it Netflix I was reading about? Part of the reason that Netflix has been reporting, they can have a show that does really well in its first season, and then it drops off incredibly in the second season. And that has been such a problem with Netflix that they've actually started looking into it. But here's the problem. Netflix, there's nobody at Netflix, and I don't know, maybe the other studios, who trusts their gut anymore. Even if they think they've got a great show, they put it out there and then they wait to see what the ratings are. And if the ratings are good, they'll order another show. But for some of these shows, that takes a year, 2 years. I think there were more than 2 years between the first and second season of Monarch, which is obviously a show that relies on a lot of post-production. But my daughter and I have both talked about this. By the time the second season comes around, you can barely even remember the first season, and it's like it's a brand new show. And, it's like when I read a book where there's a whole series, if I love coming upon book series where there's already like 9 books out, because that way I know I can just keep going. But if it's a new series, I read one book and the next book doesn't come out for a year. And a lot of times when I see it come out, I don't even remember that I read and liked the first one. I think nobody trusts their gut anymore. Didn't executives used to say, we really like this? And weren't there shows? I remember NCIS when it was a million years ago with Mark Harmon. The first couple of years it was on CBS. It didn't do that great, but there were executives that really liked it and thought it was good, and eventually it caught on and become like the most watched TV show in all of the United States. Nobody does that anymore. Nobody has that courage anymore.
Well, I think part of it, and Rebecca, you probably can have more to speak on this, having been in the industry in that kind of capacity. But it just seems like we've moved into we no longer have shared cultural moments. We don't have, since back in the day when it was 3 networks and maybe HBO, like everybody watched the same thing or didn't watch the same thing. Now there are so many things to watch that, as you were saying, it takes people time to try to even find them sometimes. So yeah, I agree. I think, but I do think that the streaming thing, the different studios, the fact that we are all disparate and all watching different things, and that sweet demographic of the, what is it, 18 to 35, I'm sure that's even different now.
They're all watching 72 hours.
Yeah, there you go. So but those tastes are so fickle that even like they'll just on to the next thing, as opposed to, and not necessarily because of our shortened attention spans, we don't really have the time aren't willing to invest the time or what patience to wait for the second season of Monarch that takes 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking.
And maybe it's an economic thing, nobody wants to be the executive who greenlit a dud and then, gave it a second season, and lost even more money. Maybe it's that kind of a thing. But I can remember long ago, before there was, I don't know if streaming existed, but it certainly wasn't prevalent. The rap for Fox was, NBC, ABC, CBS, they would give their shows, if they believed in them, they'd give them a little time to find their feet. But Fox was the show, if it didn't do well, like in the first half of the first season, it was gone. And, there's stories like they had Firefly, the Nathan Fillion, Alex Tudyk show that, they didn't like it, it didn't do well, they canceled it. And then there was this... there's a cartoon. They made a movie. I mean, it is still something that people go back and watch. And I don't know why. I don't know why things aren't given a chance. Even Friends, that big juggernaut for NBC, it didn't do great out of the box. It wasn't doing gangbuster numbers in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it goes back to what you're saying, economics. Because the market is so saturated right now, that people aren't willing to take the financial responsibility or risk rather for like I said, like we've been saying, for waiting for the rest of the audience to catch up, or to find the audience, to find where like it lives in the zeitgeist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's really expensive to create quality content. And, we're still at the beginning of the streaming era where people are experimenting with, are we going to have commercials or are we not? How many new subscribers do we get from this content? Do we release it all at once, or do we release it once a week and stuff? So I still think that they're experimenting with that. And then it used to be that there were so few distribution outlets that that your audience wasn't gonna, you could wait and see if you believe in something. But now like, who knows where the audiences are? I don't even know how many streaming services we belong to. All I know, if I want to see something and I can't get it right away, I'm like mad about it. So,
I know. Every once in a while, I'll purge. I'll look at my bill and I'll like cancel a bunch of streaming services, and then over time, it's like, oh, I want to watch that show. I guess I better resubscribe. Oh, all this is on Paramount. Oh, this is on Prime Video. And over time, I put them all back in place, and my bill is now at a point where I'm once again horrified and going to have to purge again.
Well, I'm just waiting for the, single outlet. Will it be Prime? Will it be Apple? Where I just have one streaming service and they will charge a license fee or do something where, okay, I'll pay for it, but I just don't want to have to like figure out which of the 16 channels this one show that I want to see is going to be on. I mean, it's very confusing.
That's what Google is for.
I like to, yeah, but why do I have to Google? How come I can't just like lie on my couch and, push arrows?
Yeah, I hate to tell you this, Rebecca, you're sounding a little old and crotchety,
It
a
was
little
bound to
bit.
happen.
Well, don't
Why
worry,
can't
we'll
it be
get
like
you
it used to be? I get you.
TV Guide.
Yep. Oh, I used to subscribe to that. It was wonderful.
I know, it was great.
Anyway, we are so out of time. Rebecca Ford, Scott Duff, thank you so, so much. Hey, Scott, who do you have on this Sunday?
We have Tanya Richard, who's an actor, author, activist. She has her own podcast called Tanya's Take, but she's also getting ready to do her one-woman show at American Blues Theater, Black Girl from a White Suburb. I've read the book. I've seen the workshop. It's so good. We have playwright R.J. Silva coming on to talk about a new play that he's writing, and I can't remember right now off the top of my head.
Well, that's
enough.
That's plenty, mister. I'll be back on Monday, of course. I'm going to talk to Pat Kreitlow. Wisconsin has a big primary coming up. And we're going to talk to Rex Hupke, who's back from a nice vacation. So we're going to make him really depressed by talking about the news. Thank you all. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Scott. Thank you to everybody. Remember, get out this weekend and do something you love. And Paul, I can't do it. I was going to say goodnight, matey C, but it doesn't work for me.
We're still working on it.
Yeah, we're workshopping it. I'll see you Monday. Good night.